What if I told you our economy is heading toward a dark place? Graphs, historical data, and articles that we can walk through and clearly articulate where those fault lines are appearing. If the economy were to topple, if the AI stock bubble were to pop, if the job market continues to be the bane of our economic existence, what can you do about it? And that's what we're going to be tackling today on the Zach Foust Show. If you missed the last two videos we've done on this topic, I'm going to give you a quick rundown so we're on the same page. The dollar dilemma, the wage crisis, the shelter squeeze, the rate trap, will Jerome lower rate, and the debt spiral. The next video we had were the 4 phases of the fallout: market misdirection, the household squeeze, the system snaps, and that's where we get to phase 4, the reset reflex. But what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about the 4 shelter points. The core 4. Let's zoom in on our shelter picture, Sean. Sean and I love this picture. Fire. There's Larry, CEO of BlackRock. Also, it looks like a wiener sitting next to him. You see that little tan thing? Oh, it's a shovel. It's a shovel. Looked like a wiener on a stick. What's behind Donkey's head? Is that an animal? That has to be an animal, right? It looks like a tail. It looks like a pig, a hog, a razorback. I don't know. But this is your shelter, guys. Out in the woods, just you and your raw steak on a stick. That is pretty cool. He's just got a whole raw steak on a stick. That's pretty manly. Specifically made sure that everything we're walking through today will benefit you financially, physically, mentally, whether or not this market crashes, whether or not we see turmoil. I want you to be better. I want you to be able to fight for yourself. I want you to be able to fight for the people to your left and to your right. And even though you know, and if you agree with me, you know, that we're in a system where our politicians do not care about our well-being being in the working class, where the billionaire oligarchs who lobby the congressmen that pass the legislation that benefits their pockets has been going on for decades. It is a blue and red distraction mechanism so they can chase green. Let's get Shrek out of the way, and it's life, health, legal insurance. Let's go to our first article to figure out exactly what it may mean, and then we'll reveal the little gray box. So this is gold. Gold's 100-year historical chart. In this interactive chart, we're able to see the history of gold pricing by ounce. Moving over to the right, little bounce. And what we see is what? The gold prices have been surging. Now, I want to walk through something very fast. If we look at gold prices up until about 1933, that's when the New Deal was struck, and we went from about $20 per ounce to about $35 per ounce. We would stay at $35 per ounce, and then in 1944, we would make this international through the Bretton Woods Act. The Bretton Woods Act, held in New Hampshire, was where over 100 international economic representatives came in to hear how the dollar was going to be tied to everything, and all of it was going to be linked back to beautiful gold. Then you see it stayed in around $35 the whole time until 1971. 1971 is when we had the Nixon shock. We removed the gold standard, as it was known, from our system, and gold was able to reign free apart from some type of locked down price point. What happened? The cost of gold started to surge, and surged even more post-2000. Now, why is this? Why is it gold has gone up significantly? And if you know the answer already, shout it out. But why has gold gone up so significantly? We were at $20, $35 an ounce, and as of right now, we're over $4,000 per ounce. This graph isn't even meant to show 4,000. Look at that. It's like got 2K over there. I think where it's at should technically be 3K, but it's at $4,100. Why is that? The exact reason is for the weak dollar. The dollar is weak. Why is it weak? We keep printing more of it, and as we weaken the dollar, guess what happens? We see investors, foreign and domestic, start to seek out other forms of wealth. How can I store my wealth longest and most effectively, maybe even with some growth? And people aren't seeing that in the dollar. If you look at the dollar, it has had the weakest opening to any year in the last 53 years. In the last 53 years, we have not seen a weaker year for the dollar. And this is all while the debt is obnoxiously growing. It's not just at a high number, it's obnoxiously growing, just like credit debt per consumer, household debt, card debt, all the different forms of debt at all-time highs. And our government can't even handle its own debt. And this is leading foreign investors to seek out other forms of wealth storage, gold being one. Let's bring up another. Silver. This is silver prices over the last 100 years. Now, what we see is, again, pre-1971, we had a price that was below $1. Seems like it peaked at about $1.29. 1971 hits, and all of a sudden, we get this whoo, 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 up and down, up and down, up and down. And this is caused, again, by this detethering. And when this detethering is true, there's another thing that's true. It's that the price can move with the market. What the market's telling us about silver, and by the way, this is another graph that is not properly updated. It's going up by 10, 20, but as of right now, if you go all the way to the top, it's over $50. It's over $50. This year alone, for gold and silver, they've gone up significantly. Silver going from 20 to now over $50 just in the last 2.5 years. Many people think this will continue, and a lot of the ways that I believe that it will continue is simply because of the fact that other economies, other central banks are buying gold and silver. I think I had a graph, but I don't think I posted it here, Sean. Can we click on the next one? No, it's platinum, and then that's Reddit. Shoot, can we Google central bank gold purchases graph? Central bank gold purchases graph. Because what we're seeing isn't just domestic and foreign investors buying up gold and silver. We're also seeing, and this has a lot to do with the Basel agreement, Basel number 3, valuing gold at a much higher level. We're seeing central banks in China, in Europe, maybe a different one. Scroll down, maybe there's a different chart. World Central Bank. Yeah, let's do gold net purchases. Let's try that one. I want to show you the difference. Yes, okay, so this is pretty decent. It only goes back to 2010. I really wish I could show you the 80s and 90s to show you how little gold we were buying. But this is the worldwide net purchases by central banks of gold. What do you notice happened after COVID? COVID's that little gray line right there. We have COVID right there. We have a drop off, and then what happens? Everybody's buying more than they were buying pre. This is central banks, the bank of countries, the debt creation machine for entire countries. They're buying and holding more gold. All while we won't even do an audit of our own Fort Knox for our gold. Maybe we don't want to show our cards. All I'm saying here is what we're seeing is clear. We're seeing diversification and investment. We're seeing the dollar, which is 60% of the world's reserve currency. The petrodollar, which is the anchor of all oil purchases around the dollar. We're seeing formations of people like BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. We're seeing movements in the petroleum, was it petroleum producing countries? I think it's producing petroleum producing, PPC, petroleum producing countries, are saying we don't even need the dollar anymore. We're okay with taking it in other forms of currency. That's a yellow flag. We're seeing the world get away from the dollar and move toward what? Gold and precious metals. So you may be asking yourself, how do I become a part of this? How do I do this? Let's go to this article. I want to go to the Reddit one, and then we're going to go to a CBS News article. Let's go to Reddit real fast. This is inflation-adjusted gold prices have officially hit the highest price since the 80s. Now, specifically, what's not brought up in that headline is it's not actually the 80s. That peak that you're seeing is actually from 1979 to 1981. So not the full 80s. In fact, if we look at the full 80s, we see it was trending lower. If we look at 1971, 1981, what we see is that gold spiked. Why? We were going into stagflation. If you have anybody that was an alive adult in the 70s, ask them about the savings crisis. Ask them about the oil embargo. Ask them about the 70s economy. It was a struggle. And there were a lot of bond investors that were not as heavily invested into our bond market. So what happened is we saw they were diversifying their money into other places. The other place was gold. Now, we went in 1981, brought in Reagan, tons of regulatory shifts, and the Fed chair at the time rose the Federal Reserve rate. Now, just for some perspective, the current Federal Reserve rate, it'll range anywhere between 4 to 5% at max. We hit about 5 3/4 at its top, and during COVID, it was at 0.25. In this time frame, the Fed rate had gone to 19%. 19%. So the only way they were able to fix and curtail this market was by strictly limiting the amount of credit that could be created. And we're not in a market where that could happen without complete overhaul, without complete blow up of our system. So we will not be doing that. In fact, if I were a betting man, I say the Federal Reserve probably drops its 2% inflation goal and says, look, we're going to just shoot for like 3.5% because we can't control it. We're more focused on the job market. That's what I could see happening. I could see them lowering the rate, saying, screw the inflation goal. We got to fix the job market. And that's the exact opposite of what we did in 79 and 81 to fix the problem. We following all this? All right. So let's get into the specifics of gold and silver. How do you even hold these things? Well, if we look at the CBS News article, it tells us why maybe we should hold these things. So it says, here's what gold crossing 4,000 is telling us about the U.S. economy. This is an article from October 8th of this year. It says gold is glittering for investors, with prices now topping a record $4,000 an ounce. But the reasons behind the shiny metal's surge may be less than dazzling, with Wall Street analysts saying its effects growing unease over the U.S. economy and political, viability? Stability. I can't read the far left. The price of gold has leaped 53% this year alone, far outpacing the 25%? 15% gain in, I'm just guessing numbers at this point, in the S&P 500 stock index over the same period. The price of an ounce of gold edged higher on Wednesday, touching $4,078. And according to financial data company FactSet, with some analysts predicting to go much higher. Why? For the exact reason he just mentioned and we just brought up. Political stability is not at an all-time high. Economic stability is not at an all-time high. And the empire of America, which has been around for 249 years, when typical empires only last for 250, I think there's other countries and other investors worldwide that are doing some math, that are doing some critical thinking, that are putting some logic into this economy and not just listening to an administration that's pumping it up. Let's put this in perspective. If you ran a company and you were the boss, you're the boss of a chair company. You're the boss of a chair company. And chair sales start to go down. Your company's not doing as great. You're not making as much money. Your expenses aren't dropping. And maybe one of your salespeople got a little weird over the phone with a lady. And so now you're going through some PR issues too. What do you do as the boss? Do you just walk in and say, hey, we're not making as much money. Things kind of suck right now. I'm not sure how we're going to turn our sales around. And Fred keeps talking to old ladies on the phone flirtatiously. All of this kind of sucks right now. I don't know what we're going to do. What do you think the team morale would feel like after that? Is that how you would approach it? It's not how many companies approach it. See, most companies approach it through this thing called PR, public relations, HR, human relations, within companies to ensure that the inner working system, the people that work within it, everything's fine. Don't look at left or right. Everything's fine. Don't worry. Everything's fine. All while layoffs start to happen. All while systems start getting cut back on. In the U.S. right now, we're seeing PR getting utilized. Public relations on talking points, on Q&As, on deciding which media members get to ask questions. I'm telling you, it's happening right in front of our face. It's happening right in front of our face. We're being gaslit and misdirected into believing this economy's great, all while every other country on the planet is planning for the dollar's demise. Mars is getting ready. Venus is on, no. Every other country on our planet is preparing for the dollar's decline. And stick with me to the end because we're going to talk about what that next system might be. We're going to speculate a little bit. But we're the only country hyping up our country right now, politically and economically speaking. That should be a red flag. Back to our Canva graphic. That was number one. We have 3 more to go through. We can reveal the purple block on number 1. We know what it was. It's the insurance policy of precious metals. Now, before going into where we can buy them, all that, I'm going to talk to you about that on section 4. So we'll go into section 4. We'll talk about where you can buy it, what you should buy, what you could potentially do. Remember, I'm not an economic or financial advisor or analyst. I'm simply giving you what I'm doing and what I'm seeing, and you can use this information however you'd like. Don't buy, sell, or invest based off anything I am saying. Number 2, let's remove the Shrek. That is a soccer team. That is Benzema right there in the middle. This is Benzema. I killed with him in FIFA 16. Benzema, loved Benzema. That is Real Madrid. Is that Mbappe? That is Mbappe. That's not, man. That is Mbappe. See, that's how little I play FIFA now. I don't even be watching soccer heavy. I'm the worst. So what I wanted to bring up here, now I'm realizing that might not even be the same team I thought it was. But I'm a Badusky. My bad. I'm a Badusky. I want to talk about something that is real, just like Real Madrid. I want to talk about real assets. We can remove the little block below it. I want to talk about real assets. There's so much about where to put your money and why people feel broke. Let's go to the whiteboard real fast. So we're going to go through this later, the burr, the bow, and the bee. We're going to go through this. But what I want to show you real fast is what's gone on since 2020. Okay, this is what's going on since 2020. Now, many people would believe that 2020 and COVID was the key deciding point in our timeline that led us to the inflationary point we're at today. A lot of you would be right in that opinion. But why? Why is because what we've seen develop in many graphs is this weird shape, kind of like duck lips, right? It looks like a K. Now, what does a K have anything to do with this economy? Well, many would say we're in what's called a K-shaped economy, or what's better known as a K-shaped recovery. Now, in this K-shaped recovery, what's going on? Well, the word recovery is in the word, so it obviously has to be a recovery from something. So there always has to be at the front end a crash, recession, or otherwise something that hurt the working class of the economy. In this recovery, though, what we see is one group of people on the top side of the K that are doing exceedingly well. They're doing great. Then we see another section of the economy that's not doing as well. They're not doing great. So what's the difference between these two sides of the K right now? Because we have one section of the economy that's struggling to pay bills, struggling with cost of living, struggling with home prices, struggling with car prices, struggling with healthcare costs, childcare costs, senior care costs, personal care costs. I mean, pick a cost, it's probably up. Taxes, insurance, the whole deal. It's all up. It all costs more money. So why is there then a section of the economy that's not feeling that pain, that's not seeing the pain of childcare, that's not seeing the pain of home costs, car costs, self-care, everything? Why are they not seeing the same economy that maybe this group is seeing? Well, the main reason, I don't know where to put this. Make a little gap right here. We'll put it here. The main difference between the two is an asset. It's the main difference. The main difference is creating this wealth gap, this income gap, this gap in how people are experiencing the economy. Because right now we know 90% of all the consumer spend, the people spending money at stores and grocery stores, 90% of it is coming from the top 50% of the economy. Oh, I said that backwards. My bad. 50% of the consumer, I've got to run it backwards. 50% of the consumer spending is coming from the top 10% of the economy. The bottom 90% are responsible for the other 50%. The bottom 90% are responsible for 50% of the consumer spend. The top 10% is responsible for the other 50. That is this K-shaped economy. The difference, though, is he who owned an asset, she who owned an asset. If you owned a home pre-2020, what's your home worth now? If you already had a car paid off, maybe multiple, what is that car worth now? What car payment are you not paying now? If you owned your assets before 2020, what else happened? You didn't have to get an insanely high interest rate on a car, on a credit card, on a home. If you're already here, what are you also more than likely? Old. You don't have student debt to worry about. You're not having new kids that you're taking care of. You don't even have as much food to buy at the grocery store. You old head, your stomach's smaller. You don't even eat as much. If you're over 65 in Delaware, you don't even have to pay your property taxes anymore to your school. So the older generation, the boomer generation, the banker adjacent generation that we have here is doing significantly better because they owned assets. They had a 401k, they had an IRA, they had a home, they had a business, something that could grow with this inflation. And the inflation's not going away. We'll get back to the Burr, Bo, and B. We can go back to the screen. These are not going away. These higher costs are not going away. The cost of housing is not going down. The cost of a car might come down. That's a market that's getting weird. We're not going to see less pain for the working class without legislative shift. Some of you are going to listen to this right now and be like, Zach, I'm too late. You just showed me a graph that shows I'm too late. You just showed me a graph that said I should have bought a home before 2020. I should have gotten my 2 used cars back when I was in middle school. I shouldn't have gotten a degree. I thought that was the only way I could get a job, and now I have a degree and I can't even get a job. Like, I really honestly feel very bad for those that are in that place. And some that are even in that place that are saying, Zach, I don't even have an extra $200 a month to spend. We'll get to that more at the end. But listen, just because you didn't get in on the initial jump doesn't mean there won't be more jumps. Hear me, just because you weren't in on this initial jump, I know so many people that were trying to buy a home in 2020, 2021, too many offers, too many releasing of the inspection contingencies, too many going over asking that they gave up. And I got it. It made sense to me. I completely understand. But now they wish they bought a home. They wish they bought a home. They wish they had invested into the stock market. They wish they jumped onto crypto. They wish. And it sucks. It's not a fun position to be in, but the best thing you can do from now is start now. The best thing you can do to get a tree that has grown is to plant the tree today. If you didn't plant the tree 10 years ago, 2 years ago, 20 years ago, I get it. It stinks. You could have had a bigger tree by now, but now's the best time to start. We'll walk through in number 4 exactly what I believe you should be investing into outside of just real assets, because it's not just about money. But let's walk through some real assets that you can hold. We can go back to the whiteboard. Number 1, we already mentioned it, gold and silver. Now, if you're looking to buy gold and silver to hold this as an insurance policy against the dollar, when the dollar is weakening, these are going up, all right? When that is happening and you have this insurance policy, there are people who will say you need to physically hold the gold, and there are those that will say you can buy it online and hold it on like a Robinhood. Both. Okay? Both. If you want to, go to a pawn shop, go online to one of these big mega sellers of gold that are certified, or silver that are certified, and you want a bar, you want a coin, you want to feel like a pirate, cool. Do it. It holds value. The argument for this holding of the gold is based off of, if we were to go full Mad Max. If we were to go full Mad Max in this world and people were driving around in custom cars and just trying to trade chickens with each other, how are you going to sell the gold that you bought on Robinhood? How are you going to actually do that? That's the argument for it. But I don't think we go full Mad Max. I think we have the ability as the world reserve currency to print money until we want to stop printing money, and that will keep that from happening. So what I suggest there's an index fund that I like called the SLV index, and then you have the GLD. And you can look these up anywhere. And there's multiple variations of them. With gold, you could even get into an American gold mining company like MP. There are several different ways to get in on gold and silver that don't require you to hold a physical bar. The other one would be platinum. Platinum is, I think we have an article for that one. Can we pull up platinum? I think it was the third. Real assets grow with you. I think you just marked it right there. One up. Yep, right there. Let's look at platinum. Has it taken a similar rise in the last? Yep, it has. Let's break that down to 10 years on the bottom. Yeah. So look at the last couple years, guys. Look at just the last 6 months of platinum. This is other countries looking for other forms of wealth storage and growth that is not attached to the dollar. So while you're seeing crypto go down, while you're seeing the dollar get weaker, we're seeing precious metals go up. And I get it's boring. I get you saw commercials when you were growing up. I mean, I know I did. Hold gold. You need to buy gold. It's the only true source of wealth. Hold gold. Hold gold. Man, I wish I listened. I wish I snagged me some $18 silver and some $800 gold ounce. I wish I did that, but I didn't. I didn't plant my tree. I started planting that tree in 2023. And guess what? I hold it now, and it's gone up. Will it continue to go up? Zero guarantee, But when I look at the writing on the wall, when I start examining the tea leaves and I start to think of, okay, well, why does it go up? Oh, when this happens. Oh, wait, look, that's happening. Okay, maybe it'll go up. That's where we're sitting. Other real assets. Housing is a real asset. Housing and land are real assets. The beautiful thing about land is it is a finite source. It is a scarce source. We do not have more dirt we're going to be able to create. So this is a source of value because it is scarce. It's the same reason why people will say things like Bitcoin are going to hold value over time, because there's a limit to the amount that can exist. People like things like XRP and other things have utility, but the utility of land is that it is dirt in one of the largest growing economies and countries in the world's history. And it has become a commoditized asset for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. Holding housing, holding land, I believe is still going to be a worthwhile investment. Because also, look at this. When we look at 2008 and we see the crash of 2008, again, we saw home prices going like this and then like this. The crash of 2008 did not cause home prices to go down. All right, when we saw COVID happen, prices were going up ever so slightly, then they started going down just for a wink and then back on up. And then we look at really any other recession, depression, we see the same thing happen. We see that, could we bring up the average cost of land, Sean? That was just a comment. I would love to actually see that, like a graph on land prices over time. That'd be nice. Why though? We mentioned this in our last episode, part 2. We go through this reset reflex. We print money, we lower rates, all in an effort to expand credit, get people getting debt again, getting new loans again, and this allows for demand to reappear, and that causes home prices to go up, asset prices to squeeze. Why? Because once again, we're not talking about an infinite asset. There are an infinite amount of homes. We need more homes. We're in a supply deficit at this exact moment, not even close to a surplus on affordable homes. So if we were to go through some form of recession, we print money, lower rates, more people can get loans, more money's flowing in the system, and prices go up. That's why I include housing and land in the real asset section. What do we got, Sean?
So I got farmland prices. Does that count?
That's fine. Yeah. How many years is that over?
This is from 1997.
1997? Okay. So the cost of farmland has gone up pretty significantly over that time period. The other thing that would go up significantly, we can pull up just median home sale price. Median home sale price, land, dirt. Oh, you already had it. Nice. So this is the median price of homes sold. If you look at 2002 real quick. You look at 2002, 187,000 was the median home. If we go back to 1985, median price was in or around 82,000. But now if we look at today, we see we're up above 400. But again, look at where all of those gray lines are. Look at where every single gray line is and find me one time where we had a gray line and then home prices dropped. Can you find one? Can you find one? Doesn't happen. We may have one quarter afterwards where you see some strife, but then afterwards you just see prices inflate. You just see home prices go up after these recessions, depressions, and I gotta be honest with you, housing is not in control by the working class. If you think the working class struggling, the household getting squeezed is going to cause home prices to drop, I'd have to point you to who controls the housing market. Blackstone owns over 300,000 units, but that's still less than 0.6% of the entire market. 33% of homes being purchased right now in 2005 quarter 3 are being purchased by investors, everywhere from private equity, institutional investors, to the mom and pop, and the mom and pop buys a significant amount more. A significant amount more. 40% of homes in America don't even have a mortgage right now. They don't have a mortgage. What's going to force them to sell? Investors have property. What's going to force them to sell? In 2008, we had a forced sell that happened from 2006 to 2008 because people were losing their jobs and the people who had the homes had these subprime mortgages that were adjustable rates. They were forced to sell. And even with that, post-2008, home prices started going back up. Back up. So everything around it could fall. The stock market can collapse. Banks can collapse. Quantitative easing can happen. Money printing can happen. All while home prices keep going up. Everything can be true at once. Gold can go up in value all while home values go up in value. These things can be simultaneously true. And that's where I say holding real assets like gold, like silver, like platinum, housing and land. And I have another secret asset that we're going to talk about at the end. Another little secret asset that I want to talk about at the end that I find is the most valuable asset you can hold. The most valuable asset you can hold is our little secret asset. Let's get into, do we have a couple, what else is extremely valuable since COVID? Let's go through these two articles here at the bottom. We'll skip the top ones. Let's go into these two articles. This is by HBR. Actually, no, I don't want to go through those because that's going to say, yeah, let's go right to number 3. Right to number 3 on our Canva graphic. Number 3, we got another Shrek in the way. Looks like a party's going on in the background. What's behind Shrek? What's behind number 3? Oh, it looks like a Chicago Bears pregame. Okay. What could this mean? Chicken. That's what it means. We need to start having chickens. We need to plant gardens. We need to learn how to manually pump our own water. Is that what we're leading to? Let's look at what it is. Number 3 is pregame the system. Let's go to our first article from Reuters. Not spelled Reuters, but pronounced Reuters. Swift and top global banks are working on a blockchain-based overhaul. Let's go to that first paragraph. Based out of London, it says global financial messaging network Swift and more than 30 global banks announced on Monday they were now working on, at pace, on making cross-border payments instantaneous and on a system capable of handling the various new forms of digital money. Swift, a key part of the world's financial architecture, said the institutions were collaborating on a blockchain-based shared digital ledger, which would be worldwide, they see as a vital for modernizing international bank transactions. Okay, this means, and we've seen Larry Fink talk about it, CEO of BlackRock. We've seen Jamie Dimon talk about it. We've seen people at Bank of America talk about it. We've seen everybody talk about it. We are shifting into blockchaining all assets. Blockchaining all assets. And when I say blockchain, immediately everybody thinks of Bitcoin. But I want to bring up some other options. Okay, people bring up XRP. People bring up Bitcoin, Ethereum. Could also bring up some other potential system shifts. We talked about this in our last video. What if we're no longer the world reserve currency? What if investing into things like the yuan, the franc, are good moves? What if Bitcoin is the option and you should throw all your money into Bitcoin? What if gold is the new system? What if we gold back crypto? That's been brought about. And there's also been other things brought about that we're going to show you in a video out of Russia as to what they think we're going to do with our debt here in America with blockchain. But we can read here, right here on this article. It's this is CFR. I don't know. Who's CFR? Current Foreign Relations? What's it say? Council on Foreign Relations. Okay. This is the crypto question. Bitcoin, digital dollars, and the future of money. We got a few points at the very top I want to read. So it says, since the creation of Bitcoin in 2009, we'll get back to that, cryptocurrencies have exploded in popularity and are today collectively worth more than $1 trillion. Critics say a lack of oversight has contributed to volatility in this nascent industry. Nascent? How do you pronounce that? Nascent? Nascent? I'm going to look that up. I don't want to be stupid. But regulators have begun to catch up. Let's look up that word too. Meanwhile, many governments are seeking to capitalize on the technology that powers cryptocurrencies by investing in their own digital currencies. Let's focus on that last line, their own digital currencies. Bitcoiners out there, XRP army, listen up. I am fully on board with Bitcoin as the answer. Decentralized, limited in its supply, accessible to the world, digital and instantaneous. Makes a lot of sense. But how do we know that when and if things inevitably get blockchained, that they'll use a currency we currently have access to? Just a second. Let me throw on my tinfoil hat. Who's to say the cryptocurrency that is utilized for blockchaining assets, the stable coin that's decided on, the company like a Ripple that's decided on, who's to say they will use a currency we currently have access to and not an internal country-bound asset that they created, not a central bank disseminated currency, a CMDC, or is this a CBDC, I think it's called? A central bank currency, a central bank coin. Who's to say that won't happen? I think there's a little evidence toward, I'm just going to play devil's advocate here because I do invest in Bitcoin and I do have some XRP, But I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate of what if crypto is the biggest rug pull in financial history. I just want to bring up this Google search real fast, in case you didn't know. Who created Bitcoin? It was created apparently in Japan by a man that we know nothing about. He created one of the world's most complex and beneficial blockchain currencies in a world where blockchain currency didn't exist. And then he disappeared. All right? Yellow flag. Not a red flag, but yellow flag. Let's go to the next article, though, because I find this news very disturbing. It says newly released documents detail Epstein's influence on Bitcoin's early development. If you're unaware, Epstein is referring to a man by the name of Jeffrey Epstein, a New York financier who recently has been found to have been trafficking thousands of women across the planet. The U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform recently released new documents that released Jeffrey Epstein's hidden financial influence. The records showed Epstein assisted MIT's digital currency initiative by providing funding for Bitcoin core development. At the center of this development is Joichi, the former director of MIT Media Lab. The MIT Media Lab is a renowned interdisciplinary research hub for media technology and innovation. Ito was instrumental in steering the lab toward blockchain and digital currencies. Lock in with me. In 2015, amid Bitcoin's volatile early years, Ito launched the Digital Currency Initiative, DCI, under Media Lab. The DCI aimed to advance blockchain's research and provide stable and sustainable funding for long-term Bitcoin core developers. Who do you think funded 3 of the 5 core developers on that project? Jeffrey Epstein. We have documents from the emails that were released. Of course, there's a lot that were released in that. We could talk about Bill Clinton getting a mouthful from Trump. We could talk about the fact that Putin is actively asking for, or Epstein's actively asking Putin for political blackmail. There's a lot you could go through there. But it was in 2017 that Epstein facilitated, and the number was actually off by a comma. It was 7.5, facilitated $7.5 million in donations to DCI. This included gift funds to Ito, thanked Epstein for the email titled Digital Currency Initiative. If we scroll up, we can see that initial email thread. You could see here from Jeffrey to the Ito that we mentioned. And it says, FYI, use the gifted funds to underwrite this, which allowed us to move quickly and win this round. Thank you. So we have a man who was the chair of a company that was creating the CMOs that led to the 2008 housing market crash. We have a man who is creating a complete circus out of our political landscape as to whether or not certain individuals are on a list. And we also have his hands in science studies. We have his father-in-law involved in the Perkington Press, McGraw-Hill, and the school books that we use. We have Maxwell involved in information storage that was sold as a tech product from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It was a CIA-bound created product that Israeli intelligence sold their own version of, that he sold that version of, and now every country's intelligence agency has a intelligence model that was created by the Mossad. You could walk through a lot of different issues with Jeffrey Epstein, but it definitely makes me question the legitimacy of Epstein and Bitcoin, of this random guy that disappeared off the face of the earth, and Bitcoin. I'm not putting on the full-fledged tinfoil hat saying it's going to be a rug pull, but I love diversification, and I would say diversify, because if we're walking into a world where we're pre-gaming the new system, I would much rather you hold bonds, because the bond market's good right now for return on investment because our market's a little shifty. I would love for you to hold land, hold gold, hold silver, because all the other countries, guess what? They love American dirt, and they also love gold and silver. Silver is also being utilized in a lot of EVs and solar tech, which we know China is huge on. I would suggest pre-gaming the system in a diversified stroke break through crypto, through precious metals, through real-world assets. I think that there's a lot of value that can be held by diversifying into trusts, CDs, bonds, and not having all your eggs in one hypothetical basket. Because if you think crypto's the next wave, and you and millions of people think crypto's the next wave, and by the way, the working class and the retail investor being one of the largest American investors in crypto, if you're a believer in holding with diamond hands, we stronger as ape together, whatever the wording is, if you believe that that's going to grow your net worth by being 100% in crypto, it could, but it's risky. It could, but it's risky. I want to play this one last video about crypto. This came out of Russia from an economic forum. The video that we have linked in the forum is actually the full 50-minute clip. If you're interested in watching the full 50-minute clip, it is translated by the captions from Russian. I do not speak Russian. From a gentleman that thinks that America is going to utilize crypto to pay off our debt. And this was when the debt was 35 trillion. Now it's 38 trillion. Let's listen to what my friend has to say. And if you're listening completely on audio only, this captions will be on the screen.
На дипломатическом поле. Они активно давят тарифами главных торговых партнеров, пытаясь снизить таким образом дефицит своего торгового баланса. Одновременно с дефицитом бюджета очень успешно. Америка прямо сейчас пытается поменять правила на рынке золота и криптовалют. Вспомните, какой у них долг. 35 триллионов. В общем-то, это два альтернативных валютному сегменту мировых рынков. Действия Вашингтона в этом направлении отчетливо одно из главных американцев. Они очень доверие к доллару. США, как это было и в 30-е, и в 70-е годы, будут решать свои финансовые проблемы за счет всего мира, загоняя всех куда? В криптовалютное облако. Со временем, когда часть госдолга США будет размещена в стейблкоинах, США обесценит этот долг. Еще раз простыми словами, у них сейчас валютный 35-триллионный долг, они его загоняют в крипту, в облако, обесценивают и начинают с нуля. Это для тех, кто очень любит криптой. Кончится очень быстро, в течение 3-5 лет. Понятно, что и Китай, и Индия, мир не просто переходит к новой формации финансовой системы. Мир уходит от фиатных денег и делится на зоны. А что мы? Мы продолжаем делать свою домашнюю работу. Задача ускоренными темпами экономики предложения стоит в полный рост перед нами.
And now he's going to get into more of the Russian economy. If you were only listening and you're waiting for me to break down what he said, here you go. He talked about how the American economy right now is running off tariffs. He talked about how they're doing well with our fight against the deficit. And he also mentioned that we're going to use cryptocurrency to devalue our $38 trillion of debt. He said 35, but now we're at 38. Our $38 trillion of debt onto stable coins, devalue the stable coin, and erase our debt, while simultaneously erasing the value that you hold in your crypto holdings. This would not be good long term. Some call it a bail-in, a countrywide bail-in instead of a bail-out. It would not be good. It would devalue everything across the crypto space, and it would also create such chaotic ties in our trade with other countries. The other thing that he mentioned in there that I think is probably the most true statement he said, was that the world is shifting away from fiat currencies and into zones. What he meant by that, what I took from that, is we're getting to a world where we're getting back to real utility behind our currency. We're getting back to a world where government trust is no longer going to be what backs currency. And we're also getting away from a world, when he said zones, where we do not have a one world reserve currency. I've heard China talk about this. I've heard representatives out of Great Britain talk about this. Economic forums, even with Jerome Powell on them, talking about, are we always going to have a world reserve currency? Is the dollar always going to be the backbone of international finance? And many people think no. And if that were to happen, there would have to be a new system. And if you can pregame that system by getting in on it early, by understanding the cause and effects of what they're talking about will be, you can be better protected. Gold would surge. Silver would surge. And if we're talking about countries getting away from fiat, what does that tell you? Fiat means, you can remember it with another four-lettered F word. Fiat means fake. it means there's no actual backing to the currency. It's monopoly money. Monopoly money only holds value when? When does monopoly value or money hold value? When there's people playing the game of monopoly. When there's people that are all bought in on that being the currency we're using, the trust in the game. The dollar is the same exact way. When there's an entire population that are playing the game, the dollar's worth money. But otherwise, it's just a green piece of paper. There's no oil. There's no gasoline. There's no gold. There's no medical benefit. There's no familial benefit to holding dollars other than being able to pay your finances. If we were to switch from a fiat currency, I think that the paying off of our debt via crypto is a very logistical, sound theory that sounds right up America's alley. It sounds right up America's alley. Let's invent something to disparage the working class long term and make sure that we remain the richest country on the planet. It's pretty much, bless you. It's pretty much the gist. So with that being said, what are the real assets that you can hold? And what's that big secret asset that you can hold that might get you through weathering this potential flip-flop in the system? Let's go back to our Canva. Beautiful Canva. Also, quick trick with the Trump thing. If you ever try to do a Trump impression, right, you got to front load the first syllables. Like if I were to say, it's beautiful, it's very beautiful, like that sounds fine. But if you start front loading the B's with a little bit more emphasis and be like, it's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful building. He tapers off with his voice every time he talks. What a beautiful White House. I absolutely love it. And then you work in a little bit of, what's the guy's name? He talks like this, a little scattered. Who's that guy? Who's that guy, Joe? I have no idea. Chris Watkin? Yeah, Chris, he talks like this, and then you add in a little bit of Trump, and all of a sudden it's there. I'm not great at it. I give myself a 7 out of 10. What's number 4? Remove the Shrek. The greatest asset is meditating by a lake in front of mountains in some yoga pants. Is she sitting on a towel? Very much recommended meditating with the towel or the blanket or the yoga mat. Your butt gets sore. What's number 4, though? The realist asset. The realist asset. Can we go to the article I asked you not to bring up from section 3 real quick? Or from section 2, my apologies. Yep, those 2 at the bottom under FaceTime. Yep, let's start there. This is how to thrive in the skills economy. This was an article put out recently. I think we could read the first paragraph. Yeah, let's read the first paragraph. It says, securing a great job and climbing the career ladder no longer hinges on obtaining a college degree. Great Recession impacts in 2008 played a big part in eroding the long-held belief in degrees as a sure path to success. During that time, new grads entering the job market found that having a degree did not necessarily equal well-paying jobs or lasting careers, particularly in those in for-profit institutions. Profits over people, baby. This is showing even more true today, with the job market for those that are degreed being abysmal. Under 30 years old, abysmal. If you have a degree and you're under the age of 30, you have an underemployment rate of 51%. 51%. And underemployment means simply they're much higher qualified for the job they're currently doing. They deserve to make more, do more, have more responsibility than what they currently have. 1 out of 2. All right, that's pretty crazy. We've never been at that number. Let's bring up another one. As the economy slows, focus on skills of the future, your ability to change. We'll read a paragraph or 2 here. It says, this week we saw the U.S. unemployment rate tick up to 4.3%, and economists started begging for lower interest rates. For those of us who talk with companies and leaders all day, I would say we're expecting what I'd call a normal economic cycle. It's debatable. The last major recession, not including the pandemic, which was not a demand slowdown, was in 2008. This means we've gone almost 16 years without a serious economic cycle, almost twice as long as usual. While the pandemic did slow companies down a little bit, we recovered quickly. So looking at unemployment, it more or less looks like this. After 50 years of unemployment changes, the rate is 12% lower than 5 decades ago, leading me to conclude that we're living in a long-term labor shortage. The U.S. GDP, by the way, has increased by 1,500% during that period. So what does this mean? It means there are people holding jobs longer and less jobs available. And in these economic cycles, we typically see during recessions that job openings drop, hiring drops, and even firing and layoffs go up. What does this mean for being the realist asset that you can be? I want to walk back into, let's go to section number 4, Sean, on our outline. Again, this outline is going to be public in our description on YouTube and Spotify. We could start with our headline from Reddit. Here are 40 professions that will be replaced by AI. This was from, I believe it originated from Microsoft and then got delineated down into different, tables and graphs people made. But I want to point to some of the largest shifts by employment number. So one of the biggest shifts on here is going to be sales representatives of service. The next biggest one I see is customer service representatives. That makes a lot of sense. Ticket agents and travel agents. Another one down here will be public relations specialist, new account clerks, statistical analysts, geographers. I didn't know that was still a job. I thought we discovered it all at this point. Management analysis, consumer and rental clerks, personal financial advisors, digital creation, library and science and teachers. I mean, lots of jobs, lots and lots and lots of jobs that are going to be affected by AI. And when we just saw that unemployment rate, one thing we have to know about that unemployment rate only being 4.3% is it is lagged. It is lagged, and it doesn't count our gig economy. If you lose your job, what's the first thing you're going to do to supplement your income? The first thing you're going to do. Are you going to go to the unemployment office and file for unemployment? Is that really what you're going to do first? No. You're going to go and download DoorDash. You're going to go and download and apply for Uber. You're going to open a Pinterest shop. You're going to get on Etsy. You're going to get your Shopify going. You're going to start door knocking and selling honey pots. Like, you're going to do something that fits within a niche that you understand, and you are going to be stuck, but you're not going to be unemployed. See, if you make at least $1, you're not unemployed. Hear me. You deliver one cheeseburger to a family that doesn't want to leave their house that night, and you are not unemployed. Come on. The side hustle economy has jacked up how we view the unemployment rate. Unemployment rate is higher. Just flat out. It's higher. Oh, we need a subscription for it. Let's get into the core message. Let's go to the whiteboard. I brought in Burr, I brought in Bo, and I brought in B. Guys, the inner asset, and we can go back to the screen real quick, sorry. The inner asset's you. We are in a financial battle at this moment. We are in financial war at this moment between oligarchic people under control, the impoverished slave laborers that are just trying to figure out how to get out of this system and thrive, and those that are in the middle deciding which side they're going to be on as this K-shape grows. And to be frank with you, the main difference between you and everybody else is you. I want you to fight for you. I want you to be an investor, not a consumer. And I'm not talking about money. I want you to be an investor, not a consumer. And I'm not talking about money. See, we view wealth, and wealth has been propagandized toward us, marketed toward us as meaning purely money. But I've met some very rich financially individuals that are 140 pounds overweight and struggle to sit. Are they wealthy? I've been in homes of multimillionaires and even a billionaire and noticed the family disconnect and the lack of personal relations they had with their own son, daughter, spouse. Are they wealthy? I have met so many people that have a successful business, are operating well from an economic standpoint, that struggle to make friends. They have a terrible marriage. Their son hates them. They don't have kids. Mentally, they are not wealthy. Familially, they're not wealthy. And physically, they're not wealthy. What I want for you is to have the full gamut of wealth in your life. I don't want you to just be focused on money in that wealth journey either. I want you to focus on you, because you are all that you can control. I completely agree that this ecosystem we're living in is set up for you to fail. I agree. But that doesn't mean you can't fight. I completely agree that the political system we have is meant to be a big argument, right versus left, to keep us divided, not united, so the system never changes. I completely agree with that, but that doesn't mean we still can't fight. And I completely agree that with the financial landscape of this economy is leaning toward the billionaire oligarch and not the working class, but that does not mean that you cannot fight. And I'm not saying you got to go light a pitchfork. I'm not saying you got to go, or I guess you could light the pitchfork. We could put the fire on the pitchfork. Just two birds, one stone, torch and pitch. But I'm not saying that at all. There's nothing against another side hustle if you want to sharpen pitchforks for people, but that's not what I'm saying. I want to go back to the whiteboard. What I'm saying is I want you to curtail the asset within. I want you to be able to pick up a book and read. and not doom scroll all the time. I want you to be able to meditate and be in silence without needing to be entertained. I want you to just sit for an hour and raw dog life. I don't want you to have anything that's entertaining you, anything that's pushing you in a certain direction, dopamine, endorphins, serotonin. I don't want anything moving around. I want you to be emotionally whole. I want you to be able to go back and journal all the things that you've gone through and figure out the key points in life where you changed, where a person in your life convinced you of something, where a teacher got you on a specific path, where a family member or friend got you to think a specific way. Because that's all we are. We're a culmination of the thoughts and the ideas and the practices of the people around us in our school and our family, and that ends up becoming us. They say that we are the 5 people we hang out with the most. Yes, but you're also built on a culmination of all the people you knew before. I highly suggest getting your inner asset taken care of. You might still be operating on emotional trauma that is forcing you to make decisions subconsciously that you don't even know. You might be thinking a specific way about our economy and our world because of the music you listen to, because of the podcasts that you take in, because of the media outlets that you watch. All of that is turning you into who you are, and I want you to fight for you. So here's the first thing that I want you to fight for. I want you to fight for your brain. You have a supercomputer that operates with water and electricity, weighs about 8 to 10 pounds, and sits between your ears, and you're never going to see it. We don't know how it works. We don't learn about it. We don't take care of it. I want you to change all of that. I want you to study psychology and understand how your brain works. I want you to gain emotional intelligence and take courses on communications and internal dialogues. I want you to read books like The Circle of Habit. I want you to read books like The Miracle Morning. I want you to read books like, I could go on a list forever of psychology books. The Badass and the Buddha is another one that comes up. Think and Grow Rich. I mean, there's so many books that you could go in and learn about who you are and how you operate. And that starts with your brain. It's your main operating system. Reading, meditating, understanding your emotional journey. The Miracle Morning is a book I would suggest, by the way, that suggests a 5-tier effort. Miracle Morning, it says to start every day. 1, without your phone. Without your phone. Number 2, you need to journal. You need to write a little bit. Number 2, you need to read. You need to read just a little bit. Number 3, you need to go out and work your body. And the 4th one is you need to prep for your day, even if it's work. Have 20 to 30 minutes where you can sit with a cup of coffee and just think about what you're about to do that day. You may not run a business, you may not create content or, have a lot of balls you're juggling, but at the very least, think for 30 minutes before your day starts thinking for you. Take time to care for yourself. Have a miracle morning, and that's what that book lays out. The next one, your body. Again, rich, poor, or indifferent, this is the only body you're ever going to get. How you look, how your body feels, how you walk through life and look is going to be based off the decisions you make on a day-to-day basis about you and your body. And most all of us choose physical, temporary comforts to aid in suppressing the negative thought processes in terms of food and sugar and calories. And we mask pain with food that leads us to be less healthy, have less nutrients, and be fat. And that has been happening for so long. That book was titled Miracle Morning. You need to go on a walk. You need to touch grass. You need to go and look at the trees. We need to understand at a basic biological level that we all are living our own life for the first time and presumably the last time on a blue marble that floats in the vacuum of space and everyone's arguing with each other. I ask for you to go for a walk. I ask for you to go curl some weights. I ask for you to walk on a treadmill. I ask for you to take care of what goes into your mouth, to get rid of soda and high sugary juices and take in water, to take a multivitamin, to pursue a life where your body actually operates the way you want it to operate and not in a constant state of stress and anxiety and emotional numbness because you've been masking your own emotional pain that you don't want to go over with yourself for 10 years because you won't go see a therapist, you won't talk with your family, you won't talk with your friends, and now you're left in your own echo chamber of pain because all you see is political and economic turmoil every scroll you take. What I'm asking for you is to take time to fight for you. Stop operating in the constant chaos circle that is social media. Start fighting for you. Have a day where you're not on your phone. Just one day. Could you do that? Does that sound really painful? One day without your phone. 1 hour without any stimulus. Anything? Could you do that? Because if you can't, that's a problem. That is your problem of relying on everything else to entertain and sustain you other than you, your body, working out, food, and water. Literally, if I got you to take a multivitamin, go on a walk every day, eat under 2,500 calories, and drink water, half a gallon, you will be it will be insane how different you feel. If you're taking a multivitamin and getting yourself all the nutrition sources you need, you're going to feel insanely better without needing a drug, without needing pornography, without needing social media scrolling, without needing that person in your life. It's good to need people. It's bad to have a vice of people. Without gambling, without doing whatever you do as a vice. The vices come in when we can't support ourselves internally. We need something external to fill our internal gap. The last one. And for those that hear this and turn it off, that's fine. Let me cook. Bible. I don't think you need to be a Christian. Hey, I don't think you need to be Hindu. I don't think you need to be Buddhist. I don't think you need to be anything specifically. But I do think you need to understand that whether by accident or purposeful, you were created. You have zero experience of being a human before the day you were born. And even though people would like to say they know, we don't know what happens when we die. We're all living this finite amount of time that we don't know how long it's going to be on an earth that is a rock in the middle of space. We're never going to exit. And you just have to live with that. I say having a foundation and understanding that you're not the center of the universe, that your ego and your pride isn't the center of everything that beats on this planet is very healthy. That reading, for me, the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and just seeing how Jesus modeled himself as a model for myself. You know, to love the neighbor. He never says bomb thy neighbor, by the way. It never happens. He never says, if they got my land, bro, go take that shit back. Never said that. Never said that. He also never said, hey, don't say fuck. He never said things like that at all. He said not to be rude, not to be evil, not to be unkind, not to let unwholesome words come out of your mouth. And those are words that were created in Europe in like the 1600s. So is that what he was talking about? He doesn't say to not be gay. He doesn't say to go out and fight for your political agendas with the Bible as your backing. He doesn't say to nationalize Europe into America via a Judeo-Christian version of what he was saying. He doesn't say any of that. You need to find your spiritual foundation. And all I mean by that is the spiritual foundation of understanding that you and I both have the same oxygen-nitrogen combination in the air that we need to live. We both need the same amount of food and water to sustain ourselves over time. We both need the same shelter over our head. We both need the same versions of traveling to wherever we need to get to our job. We both have the same problems in one way, shape, or form. We have the same stress hormones. We have the same dopamine releases. We have the same biochemical makeup, but yet we argue with each other. And to me, if you have a baseline of understanding, okay, I was created, so that must mean there'd be some purpose here, and that purpose definitely isn't being mean to my neighbor or being self-sufficient, then, well, that leads me to say, I'm going to push for my person to my left and my right. I'm going to fight for them. Once you have fought for yourself, your brain, your body, your family, your friends are in line. The foundation of who you are, the core of you is found confidently in a real version of you, not some my identity. Get it? Not identity versus my identity. Many of us are operating with either no identity or a my identity. And that my identity can be the blue or red political system you affiliate with, that when someone counteracts against it, you get mad. It could be your sports team that when someone says, oh, they suck, you literally get frustrated and angry. That's an emotional response. There are so many different line items we could walk through around how to get to the point where you can love others like yourself, left, right, neighbor, doesn't matter what they believe in. Because once you get to that point and can grow in that journey, we're going to see a world individually from your eyes looking out that looks a lot gleamier and not as gloomy. You're going to see a lot more sparkles. You're going to see a lot more opportunity. You're going to see the good in people. Man, when I have people that disagree with what I say, when I have people that disagree with stats or sources that I'm throwing on screen, that's fine. That's cool. This is to cause conversation. What I'm doing and what we're doing here is to cause conversation. I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. I'm pretty dumb when it comes down to it. I don't know a lot. But when someone counteracts a fact, a historical source, it doesn't say anything about me. It says something about them. And I have a lot of empathy toward that. I have a lot of compassion towards somebody who's been propagandized their whole life to believe something, being told it's false. I have a lot of questions that I want to ask angry boomers when they're angry over why you're buying avocado toast and there's nothing statistically backing that. I do get frustrated when people say this housing market is just a system, it's a cycle, it'll come back, you're just whining, complaining. because they just don't know the facts. I had a conversation with a multimillionaire investor. I'll let you in on this, that wanted to invest in us growing our media company. The tune of dollars was going to be $5 million, and it still might happen. Okay, $5 million investment in a media company. You know the one thing that's keeping it from happening right now? Our differing opinions on Israel. And I still love the guy, and he still loves and respects me. But it may not be something we go into business over because I'm not shutting up about it, and he doesn't want to say anything about it. Doesn't mean we're any different as humans. It just means we need to have more conversation. We need to have framework around creating and fighting for our own lives, fighting for our body, fighting for our brain, fighting for our own spiritual foundation. Could be the Bible, could be the Torah, could be, don't read the Talmud. I'll put that one as the no. It could be any one of these religious texts, religious documents, but figure out why you're here. What happened before you were here? What happened on this earth before there was an earth? What happens when we leave the earth? All of these are pertinent questions that matter when our finite life is gone. All these questions are extremely pertinent when our finite life is done. It's not just about money. Money is the tool that makes this world move. The economy is the thing that can make you survive or thrive as a human on this planet. But let's not just forget that we are indeed a human on a planet. We don't know how it spins. We don't know how to make humans. We don't know how we breathe, why there's enough air, why the sun's in a perfect spot, why cows have 4 stomachs. Like, there's a lot of weirdness, right? I don't know everything. But what I do know is that I believe a God created us. I believe that that God loves this planet, loves these people, and calls me to love those people all the same. And if me dying as a loving individual who's not going to get mad at someone for having a different opinion, if I die as somebody who fought for the person to my left and my right, and I go into a grave and then Buddha's there and he's like, psych, not Jesus. I'm not going to have lived a bad life. I'm not going to be unsatisfied with the life I lived. I'm not going to be mad about the life that I lived. And if there's nothing, if it's just black, then there's nothing I can feel. I lived the life that I could. And I encourage every single person listening to the sound of my voice, whether you believe a fallout is coming, whether you believe there's really fractures in our system, or that things like gold and housing could go up, all that's to the side of one thing you can indeed fight for, and that's you. You can fight maybe for your pockets. You can fight maybe for your future, but you can definitely fight for your right now. Getting your brain to stop thinking about the past and your failures and the things you can't forgive yourself for and the futures and the unknowns. There's no reason to stress about something you do not know. To be able to live under your 2 feet in a body you're happy with, that feels good, that you're proud of taking care of, with a brain that's operating properly neurochemically, that loves life to the extent at which you wish to love life, I think that's a great path to take. And once you've successfully fought for yourself, you can fight for the people to your left and to your right. And maybe that means getting your family financially independent. Maybe it means you're lighting up a pitchfork and a torch. I don't know. But taking care of you allows you to fight for others. Just like on a plane, if you were to go down, they say to put your mask on first before helping anybody else. And right now, the economic plane might be going down. I got my mask on. I'm handing you yours. Put it on, learn, grow, and fight for yourself. And I think that's the end of episode number 40 of the Zach Foust Show.